Okay guys, I want to start a new series and this one will be about typography. And there are several reasons for that. First, I love messing around with letters. Second, I think that typography is underrated in all 3D fields. You can find tons of works, tutorials, and other type of resources on characters, guns, killer robots, vehicles, and whatnot, but typography is rare. And the third reason is I want to show my respect to the old masters by using their awesome work as references. I will use artworks from books I have in my library and convert them in 3D art using Plasticity and Blender. So let's start. And these two books will be my main references, and you can find them also on archive.org. And that's an awesome place where you can scroll through the pages, and I will give you the links. So after logging in, you can borrow it and you can scroll through the pages. So that's an awesome opportunity here. Let's say we want to go to page 264 and you can zoom in quite a bit. Look at the resolution, it's crazy. And the letter I want to start with is this one. So you can take a screenshot and follow along. Okay, here in Plasticity, from the front view, I will delete the default cube. And with Ctrl-Shift-O, I'm importing my reference image. I push it a little bit back. Okay, the second adjustment I'm doing is pressing M and lowering the opacity. Let's try something like 0.2. And now we can lock this reference image and start to draw right away. And I start with the vertical line. With Shift A, I create a line. Okay, now let's create a second line. Shift A, and let's start somewhere here, and we will loft these lines. Control point mode, select both control points, press L for loft, and let's play with the continuities. I want to go with the G1 and I play with the tension by pressing D. So that's okay. And I don't need this line. We can do a similar thing here, but this time I create a line, not perfectly straight, a little tilted. So it follows along this curve. And press OK. And again, let's loft these guys. Pressing L, play with the continuities. We can delete this one. And here I want to create a little center circle. Create two lines. And I will use these ones for trimming this part. And if I'm not pleased, I can again trim. And now in control point mode, select these two, press L. That looks okay to me. I press OK. And here I again create a horizontal line, a perfect horizontal line, again for lofting these two. But here I'm not pleased with this endpoint, so I will again trim it. Yeah, trim it here at this snapping point. And I don't know why this always pops up like as if it was an error. There isn't any error. Again, L, play with the tension. And also with the continuity. So in this case, we can try something like this. This is G2. This remains at G1. I like this curvature. And delete this one. Or I don't delete it. I can use it. I can use it here for creating another connection here. Pressing L, G1. Yeah, that looks okay right away. I don't have to play around. I press OK and I continue my lofting journey. This time I take my line, bring it to somewhere here, and let's rotate this, pressing R twice. And if I press Ctrl, I can rotate in 5-degree steps, and I want this 45-degree. Press OK and bring this guy to here. And let's loft these two. Play with the tension until this curvature fits the reference. That looks okay. So I take this guy, duplicate it, press OK, and I rotate it pressing R twice and pressing Ctrl, so I rotate it 90 degrees. Okay, and bring this guy up to here. And I want a connection here, so I again duplicate it. I don't want it to be here. I want it to be rather somewhere here. And I will tell you the reason in a minute. Press L for loft. G2 looks okay, but let's look how G1 is looking. G1 is looking better, and I go with G1 after playing with the tension. So you see, these are repetitive tasks. And loft this end. G1 looks okay. Yeah, that's okay. Okay, now let's take this line and bring it to somewhere here. I've played with this line off the record, so that's why the pivot is off. So let's bring it to the middle. R twice. Let's press Ctrl for snapping to 45 degrees and bring one endpoint to somewhere here. So to the middle of this curvature, not the other one. We will ignore the brown parts because these are there for simulating a 3D effect, but we don't need to simulate a 3D effect since we are creating a real 3D object, so we can ignore these brown parts. I hope that makes sense. So let's loft these two control points, pressing L, and this time obviously I need the G0 continuity at this part, and here G1. Yeah, that looks cool. Let's play nevertheless with the tension. Let's keep on lofting. This tutorial contains obviously lots of repetitive actions. So there is no point in showing these actions in real time. In this case, you know the deal. Use a line to create lofts between the line and the curves you have already created. Or maybe we have to rotate it further. Even by 10 degrees, something like this, because here is such a curvature, and this line has to simulate the continuity of this curvature. So that's why a straight line, a straight horizontal line would be wrong. And that's a good sign that it is closing, shows that it is all flat and on the same plane. One might ask why I don't draw the lines using the control point curve or the spline curve, and here is the answer. Creating the lines that way would be far more tedious and inaccurate, since you can't create such perfect curves like with the loft workflow. And if we go to edge mode, we have this situation, which looks okay. These are the most critic parts here, but they look okay. And before continuing with the middle part, with this hole, I would like to make one step for these sharp corners. I don't want to have these sharp corners. That's why I will round them up with the tangent circle here with this guy. First click on the first edge, second click on the second edge, and make something like this. That's okay, we don't have to go crazy. I just want to avoid this sharp corner. Okay, and we will do the same thing here. Again with the tangent circle, click on the first edge, then click on the second one. First I have to activate this. Click on the first edge, then on the second one, and here you can see that we can create a tiny tangent circle. That's okay, because on the one hand we want to avoid this sharp corner, but on the other hand we don't want to lose the original form. So I don't want to make a big tangent circle. So if we press T and trim these parts and look from this distance, doesn't look sharp as in the original, but it looks okay. Gives us a sharpness illusion. And after converting this into a solid or creating a solid out of it, that will look sharp enough. Because in the 3D world, nothing is perfectly sharp as in 2D. There has to be some kind of fillet or some kind of bevel. Otherwise, it looks unnatural. So let's continue with the inner part. Let's see how we can start this one. Creating a center circle somewhere here. Let's see how we can connect this yin-yang type of shape perfectly. Again, create another center circle. Maybe I will do something like this. I press G, V, bring it to here, and I press again G and press Ctrl for snapping it to the edge of this small circle. Press OK. But now here is a deviation. I don't want to have touch deviations like this one. And let's make this one bigger. But let's change the pivot to here and press SS. Make it slightly bigger. Something like this. Again, let's snap this one to here. We have to zoom in. Change the pivot, pressing V. And again, press G, press Ctrl. Okay, that looks perfect. There isn't any deviation any longer. Now let's trim this part, creating a simple line here. Okay, and let's press T. And let's make a similar thing here at the top. Shift A, somewhere here. Okay, perfect. So let's delete this line and trim this part, pressing T. So that's what I wanted, this perfect curvature here. Now we can try something crazy. Duplicate this line. So we have a perfect straight line here. And the fact that here is a deviation, or you know what? I will create a spline curve. And delete this part. Pressing T. Now let's make a big fat loft here. One might even ask why I don't draw the lines in a vector program and import them as SVGs. Again, lofting gives you the best result, and even if you are proficient in drawing paths in Illustrator, which I am by the way, I highly recommend to master drawing curves in Plasticity as well. Keep on creating lines here for the inner parts. For these three parts, including these shamrock type of shapes. But first of all, let's create this curvature, this one. And maybe we can borrow these two. Shift D. Okay, SS. Make this one smaller. And play around until it fits. And maybe even stretch it a little bit. So S, F. So first snapping point, then the second one, and now stretch this guy. Something like this. Press OK. I guess I have to redo this part. So let's trim these parts, these segments, pressing T. And don't worry about this curve mess. We will rebuild it and clean it up quite a bit in a few seconds, in a few moments. And we will do this shamrock thing in a minute after we have created one, and then we will duplicate it, put it to all the other places. That's why I will leave it for later. But for now, let's keep on creating these curvatures. And here, let me try to make a bold move by simply creating a center circle, a huge one. And let's see if I can use this one as one big fat curve, which seems to work. Press OK. I will make a duplicate of this one, push it to the side, and trim this guy. Select these two lines and the circle. Shift H for hiding everything else. Now I can trim comfortably. Press OK, bring back the rest. Okay, now I can do the similar thing with this circle. Let's see, but this time this circle has to touch this point, G, V, snap it to this edge, and then again G, press Ctrl for snapping it to the end point of this curve we have just created. And now I create a line, which I will use as a trimming line. Again, isolate this curve, this line, and this circle, pressing Shift H. And now I can trim the rest of this guy, pressing T. That's what I wanted. I don't need this line either. Press Alt H, bring back the rest. That's what we have so far. Here I will create a line. Both control points, L, that looks okay. Well, you know what? I can try something else. Let's try this guy, this 2-point circle. Create a 2-point circle here right away. Create a line and trim this guy. This stuff also. I guess I have to trim furthermore, maybe from here. I will hide this curve for a minute and I will create a line and try to loft with this line and see if I'm able to get a cool curvature. So hide this guy so it doesn't get in our way. Let's see if we can loft. Goes into the correct direction, but let's play with the tension. Okay, that looks cool, but here that looks weird. I like this curvature until this point, and from here on I don't like it. So I will say okay and create another line which I will use as a trimmer. Press Alt H for bring back the, and delete this one. Okay, that's the last piece. And of course I forgot to do this part. That's important. But first of all, let's make the inner part. Again, let's press Tab twice, type in 135, so we have a perfect 45 diagonal line. And we will do the similar thing here, but this time I want to make something else similar to what we have done here. So creating a huge circle which will have the curvature of this top part. The only thing we need to do is just trimming this. So that's what we have so far. And you see, perfect. If we go to face mode and select this outer part, we can create a solid right away. But that's not what we'll do. We will do it another way. Taking this face and extruding it isn't the optimal solution, even if it looks easy and optimal, but that's not the case. We have to rebuild stuff and whatnot. I mean, I can show it to you in order to avoid all these edges. First moment it looks okay, but it isn't because of all these unnecessary edges, which will give us trouble when we try to fill it. It doesn't do the job. So let's bring back the rest and continue with these shamrock type of shapes. I will not draw them one by one. I will simply make a generic one. And therefore, I will use the control point curve and play around with the curvature. So let's take the duplicate, drag along the x-axis, RZ 180. Let's see if we are able to extend this curve, because now I want to create the stem, but if I create it right away, it will be too thick, I guess. It would be too thick, so it has to start somewhere here, the stem. So therefore, I will select this one and look for extend curve. So F, extend, and play around with the distance. Yeah, that's okay. So 0.02. That's okay. I will do the same here. So let's press Shift R for repeating the command. 0.02. Perfect. And now I'm ready to place it all over our letter. Okay, now let's round these corners up. Join these. And let's see if we can fillet them right away. Let's give it a small number, like 0.0015, something like this. Yeah, it works. Again, BD. Join all of these. And position it. And play also with the scale if you need to. Okay, now we can trim all these parts and join. Matter of fact, we can join this whole curve, play with the fillet. And this one I will make big, not as small as this one. Let's type in something like 0.05. So the curvature merges with this shape. Yeah, let's fillet this one also. And do the same here so we don't have any drama later on when we are making some fillets or whatnot. Okay, let's see how we are doing. Yeah, this is one curve now. This is one joint curve. So they aren't merged yet. They are just joined, and I will show you the difference. I've showed it in several of my short tip videos, but I will show it here also because it's a very important topic. In a minute. First of all, let's keep on joining. We will rebuild it in a minute. That's why I'm not that concerned about this transition. So let's continue. So this is one curve, this. Now we can join these curves. You can see how the outliner is being cleaned up. Okay, now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 parts. So the outer shape, the hole, and 3 of these shamrock type of shapes. So that's okay. Here in control point mode, I forgot to fillet this guy. And before doing any type of rebuilding, I would first like to duplicate these, Shift D, and make a backup, Control G, and I will call this backup folder Joint Curves. And I will deactivate it. And now we are ready to rebuild this. Okay, I have just noticed that I forgot to make this part. And I will create this part and join it with this one. That's simple, Shift C. Select this newly created part and join it with the already existing one. That's another way of rounding up the corners. You know, the first one was the one with the tangent circle, creating a tangent circle and on both edges, trimming the sharp corner. That's the first method of rounding edges. The second method is filleting right away. I wanted to show you both. Another thing I want to do before rebuilding is I want to make this part slightly thicker. And the reason for that is later on when I fillet the solid, I want to have some room, I want to have some space for creating a decent fillet. And if it is too thin, I won't be able to make big fillets. So that's why I'm making these slight adjustments. Okay, I think now we are ready for rebuilding. So F, rebuild, points, something like 400. That looks okay. Let's check before pressing OK. Okay, that's something we can fix manually. And I'm checking for all these parts. Here's also something we have to fix later after pressing OK. Yeah, it looks okay. The rest looks okay. So let's press OK for 400. But before making these fine adjustments, I want to rebuild all these curves. So the rebuilding part is finished. So F, rebuild, again points method, not the refit method, because if you make refit, it won't merge all these segments. They will remain separate, so that's not what we want. We want one part, one curve. Okay, for this one, since this is a smaller part than the outer one, we can type in a smaller amount. Let's try something like 200 and see if that works. 200 looks okay, and it has approximately the same distance as the outer one, so the distances between the control points, I mean. On the other hand, I want to have more control for the shamrock, so that's why I will type in 300. Yeah, that looks much better. And I will go with 300. Rebuild this one. Let's try 200. This one works also with 200 since there aren't that many transitions like here. So I will go with 200 for this one, 300 for this one. Maybe it's too much for this small part. Yeah, 200 will do the job. To be honest, I don't even know if using too many points is somehow slowing down the system. I haven't noticed something like this. I mean, maybe we can even go with 1000. I'm not sure about this, but I will nevertheless try to have well-proportioned point counts. 250 is okay for this one. Okay, now we are done with the rebuilding part and we can do the fine-tunings. Okay, let's start with the fine-tuning of the outer part. Let's check for any type of issues. Here I can't see any issues. That looks okay. Here is some stuff I don't like. I don't like these type of zigzags. If you look in edge mode, you can see that there is some inconsistency going on. And therefore, I can align the control points with the curve. And if you look now in edge mode, it looks better. And we will do this for all the issues we notice. Here is again something zigzaggy going on. So the zigzag is indicator that something's not going that smooth as it's supposed to be. But other than that, you should also check for the curvature, of course, by going to edge mode and check like this if everything looks okay. Now we can continue with this inner part. Okay, let's check for the shamrock. And this imperfection is part of the game, so that's okay. Don't be bothered by this. We don't have to do anything perfectly. That's okay if stuff is imperfect. By the way, we have zoomed too much in. I mean, we will look from this view maybe. No one will check from this view. So if you find some imperfections from this distance, completely fine. But we nevertheless want to fix the issues we are noticing. Here you can see as soon as you drag the point onto the curve, the shape looks better, the curvature. I hope that makes sense. So always check in edge mode also without being distracted by the control points. Okay, this one is also okay. Continue with this one. Okay, now we have made all these parts, so this is the last one. I think we are finished with the rebuilding part and the fixing of the rebuilt curves. Now comes the fun part. I have made some experiments off the record, by the way, and at one point I forgot to record. So this is the third time I'm talking the same stuff, just in case you are wondering what these merge curves and these solids and whatnot are. Okay, now in face mode we can extrude this guy and see if everything goes smoothly. Let's extrude the distance of 0.6. Press OK. And check for show edges. We want to see if there are any edges. So as you can see, there aren't any redundant edges whatsoever. Let's take these curves. In my former attempts, I already made a folder called merged curves. So that's why I will call these guys merge curves 2. Super creative. I deactivate these curves. Okay, now I can start with the filleting. So let's start with filleting this outer part. BD. And you have to make these filletings very gently, otherwise overshoots and gives you an error. 0.3 looks okay to me. Let's even try something like 0.4 maybe. Even 0.4 works. But I will go with 0.035. That's okay. We don't want it to be too rounded. And also check with the edges deactivated. I will go with 0.03. Okay, I like this. Let's make the other big curve also 0.03. So the outer part and the hole, they have the same fillet. And for the detail, so BD 0.02, I will give this one a smaller fillet right away. 0.02. I mean, I know the values because I make this one the third time. And here also 0.02. And here you can see that nearly overshot, or I don't know how you call it, that these lines intersect. But we were able to get away with our values. We hide the edges. We have this situation. And now I will also do the back part. I don't want this one to be empty. So therefore, I will bring back the merge curves. And in face mode, I will again extrude. Shift select the other inner part in face mode and simply extrude. And for being able to see the thickness, I extrude outwards. I will push them later in, not later, in a few seconds. And I want this one to have a thickness of, let's say, 0.4. And I will push them in. G, Y, push them in by the distance of 0.6. So the same distance as the thickness of the big part. And we can hide the curves. Now I want a detailing here at the inner parts. A detailing similar to this. I mean, let me show you when I hide the solids. Here are some lines, some kind of lines going on. And I want a similar detailing. So that's why I will create some cylinders or one cylinder and array it. And the cylinders will go through these inner parts. And then I will cut away the outstanding part of the cylinder. So let me show you, or let's do it together. I hope you are following along and you have fun. So let's create a cylinder here. We can press V for changing the direction. Doesn't matter because we can rotate it afterwards. So RZ 90. Let's look from the front view, make it bigger so it exceeds. And of course, we want to have this one thinner. The length along the x-axis is okay. So we press S, Shift X for scaling along the Y and the Z-axis and excluding the x-axis. Make something like this. Can be even thinner. Yeah, it can be slightly thinner, so S Shift X again. Bring it out. And now we can make our array. Either you look for array or you press this button. Type in a higher number, obviously. Try something like 40. 40 is far too much. There is one thing which bothers me, and it is the thickness of the cylinder. It's still too thick, so I will escape. Press Shift SX, make it thinner, because if it is too thick, then it starts to have conflict with the shamrock. S Shift X, yeah, something like this. Okay, again, array, and type in a high number. Again, let's start with 40. Now that looks much better, I think. Of course, this is all up to your personal preferences. If you like thicker pipes, then go with the thicker ones. Press OK. And now we have tons of solids. Next step is making intersection booleans. And let me show you. We will use these three parts. Let me hide the image. We will use these three parts as cutters, so therefore we will duplicate them, bring them out. We will use these one as cutters for our intersection booleans with these pipes, and therefore these pipes have to be one part. Let me first hide this one and these so they don't get in our way. So in order to make all these pipes one part, we have to create some kind of solid. Let's make a cylinder V and duplicate this guy, and we have to make a union boolean so all these pipes are one part, and we can then make our intersection booleans with these cutters comfortably. So therefore let's select these, and you know, if you select from left to right, you can only select the parts which are completely in the box selection. So in this case only the cylinder. But if you select from right to left, you just need to touch the object and you already have selected. So select all these pipes and these two cylinders and press QQ for making a union boolean and press OK. Select these cutters, G, Y, bring them here on the pipes so they intersect. Take these cutters, shift the target body, bring it to the side because we will use them in a minute for the second intersection boolean. But first start with the first one. So select this, the target body, press Q, select the cutter and intersection, or press Shift E for intersect. Boom. So that's our first intersection boolean, and we will repeat this 2 times with these cutters. So that's why I have duplicated it. Because as far as I know, you cannot select multiple cutters, or let's try with this one. So select this one, Q, select the cutters, Shift select. Yeah, that works. Duplicating this wasn't necessary. So let's press intersection. And we are done. We can delete it. So we can select multiple cutters during one Boolean operation. I wasn't aware of that. And if we press Alt-H for bring back the rest, we have this detailed lettering going on. Okay, there are 2 things I would like to do. One is, let me show it here in Photoshop. So one thing is this part, this border obviously has another color than the thickness. So the first thing I would like to do is separating this front part from the rest. So therefore, I will simply create a line and use this line as a cutter. Bring this guy out, the line I mean, the cutter. Because sometimes it doesn't work if it is intersecting with the object, it is cutting. So select this guy, the letter, press C for cut, and then select the cutter, the line as the cutter, press OK. And if we bring back the edges, we can see that we have a cut here, but it's too thick. So I will repeat it, but this time I will bring the cutter further out. So to somewhere here, G, Y, press Ctrl for snapping it to this edge. And let's see if we are able to make a clean cut. So select this guy again, C for cut, and select the cutter, press OK. Yeah, that's what I wanted. Now we can give this front part another color than the thickness. And I hope that this will contribute to our detailing. The second thing I will do is obviously making these ornaments around the letter, but I don't know how much this contributes to the overall look of the letter. So let's try. For this shape, I will use a spline curve. Okay, I will keep on drawing these curves, these spline curves, and I will time-lapse this part. But before doing that, I first want to explain what I'm doing. I will make, like I said, these spline curves, then doing the fine-tuning of the curves. And after that, I will pipe all the curves so that I have solids, and then I will merge them. So make union booleans and fillet them so that we get cool organic shapes. First, the drawing of the curves. So now the time lapse can start. Okay, now I have created all the curves with slight variations. I skip this or this, and now I will hide the reference image and check whether the curvature looks cool without the reference image or whether I have to do some adjustments. For instance, here, independent from the reference image, in edge mode, always in edge mode here, that looks weird. Let's see how we can fix this. Always check in edge mode whether your curves are looking okay, because in control point mode you can't see, you can't judge comfortably because of the distractions of the control point curve. So always go back and forth between control point and edge modes. Make your adjustments in control point mode, but always check in edge mode. Here something's looking weird. Now comes the piping part, and let me show you as an example how I will go about it. So let's take this guy, this curve, press P for pipe, adjust the thickness, which is called section size here. Maybe something like this, and also play with the scale. Let me show you also what scale is. So if you type in 2, one part of the curve will be thicker. If you type in 0.5, it will be thinner. So that's the variables you can play around. And I will, for instance, go with this one, 1.5 for the scale. And in object mode, I can select the curve as well as the pipe I have created now, which is a solid. And I can bring this guy further down, something like this. Maybe this is too far. No problem. I just create a line and I use it as a cutter. So select the solid, press C, select the cutter and delete the unnecessary part as well as the cutter. And obviously we have to now change the position of the curve of this one. Press OK. And one more thing. I don't want to have flat endings. That's why I will either Shift X delete this face, repatch it with Shift J but in G1 continuity, or I will in edge mode BD fillet it. Let's make the same with this guy. Again, P for pipe. Play with the section size, 0.03 maybe. That looks okay. Maybe 0.04. 3.5 in the middle. That looks okay. Scale 2 or 1.5 again. Press OK. Let's look from the front view and play with the positioning of this pipe, this newly created solid. Bring it in so we can comfortably join these two pipes. So select both of them, press Q twice for making a union boolean. Press OK. Let's fillet this. BD, so make a big fat juicy fillet so it looks organic. Isolate this, Shift H. Let's look from the left or right view and create a sphere. Again, from the front view, and let's place this guy to somewhere here. Select both, Q twice, press OK. Okay, let's press B, D for starting our fillet. But before continuing, I want to add variables. So press V for add variable points. Now I have two variables. This one I make smaller and this one I make bigger. So I can make two different thicknesses of fillets for one and the same edge. That looks okay. Let's look from the front view. Continue with all the other parts. So this I will again time lapse because it's all repetitive stuff. Okay, that's what we have so far, and there is one more thing I would like to do before exporting this one to Blender. I don't want the transition from this front part to this thicker part to be seamless, but I don't want to give it a fillet either. That's why I will give this one a slight border to this thick one, so that there is something like a outline going on. So let me show you what I mean. First of all, let's isolate this guy, this one. Shift H, go to face mode, select this outer face and create an isoparam curve, but in the other direction, not in this one. So therefore press tab for change the UV direction. Bring it to somewhere here. That's okay. Let's activate the edges so we can see what we are doing. And now I would like to offset this face. So if you select this face in face mode without doing anything else, the offset face pops up. And let's see if we are able to offset right away. And here it says here self intersections if the offset distance is too large. So let's try something like 0.02. And it's still too large. 0.01 works, but I'm not sure whether this is too small, this transition. Let's see if we can get away with 0.15 or even 1.9. Let's negotiate with plasticity. 8, still too large. 7. I guess 7 works. Press OK and bring back the rest. Alt H. And if we select in edge mode this edge loop or this edge and this one also, and press BD for filleting, 0.015 maybe. So that's what we have, a slight border now around the thicker part. And let's see if we should do it also here on the inner part. So isolate this guy and in face mode, let's select this face. Again with 0.015. If you look from the front, we don't see any difference, but it worked. Let's fillet these guys also. Let's look from the back view so we can see what we are doing. Now we have the same effect as on the outer part. And let's continue with the same for the other parts. This looks weird, or not weird, but here is a sharp edge, and if we fill it, we will have problems. So let's make this one round. And these sharp edges need to be filleted. Let's continue with this part. So this one was a really tiny detail, but tiny details are what gives life to your artwork. Let's hide the edges and switch to perspective view, hide the overlays. So that's what we have so far. Okay, now everything is hidden. In Blender we can check only visible. And there are tons of solids which we cannot join now. We will do it later in Blender. But the big parts, we can give them names. Now let's go to Blender and import this bad boy. Let's go to the Plasticity add-on. I hope you have already connected it and whatnot. Here let's check only visible. And press refresh and see what we get. Yeah, here is our letter. And now we can start having fun with the colors. But before starting with the coloring, there are a couple of things I like to do with every model I import with the Plasticity add-on. So the first step is bringing all the solids into the scene collection. So bring it out of this folder structure, which is generated automatically with the Plasticity, with the Blender Bridge add-on. So therefore, press M and move the parts to the scene collection. And now we can delete this folder structure. The second thing is grouping all the small parts, and therefore I am hiding first of all the big ones, which I have named already in Plasticity. If you haven't named it, you can do it now. Select the big part, for instance this one, press F2, then you can give this guy a name and hide it, pressing H. So the shortcuts are the same for hiding and unhiding. This one I called it R depth height. So this is cutter 1, 2, 3. Yes, I have named them that way so we can hide these guys. And now we can join all the ornaments and all these horizontal detailing. I first go to orthographic view, pressing numpad 5. Now let's select all these ornaments, pressing shift, and then press again shift and select the specific one for highlighting it. So this one is highlighted yellow, the other guy is orange. So we need to highlight one in order to join them, join all the other parts to the highlighted one. Press Ctrl J. Now this is one object and we can rename it, call it ornament. And here the cursor is at the middle of the world origin, but I want this one to be at the middle of the object itself. So I press Shift S to geometry. Now we can hide this one as well. And we will do the same with all these guys. Select them, Shift select one of them, Ctrl J, Shift S to geometry and rename it. I can call this one detail, since this is the only detail. And by the way, we can now delete some junk here. Alt Z, go to X-ray mode. Press Alt H for bring back the rest. And I will do the same with the cursor to geometry for the other parts also. So this one, Shift S to geometry, Shift S to geometry. Okay, we have done all the technical parts so far together, but the coloring part I will do off the record and I will show you my solution, my approach. I don't do coloring parts also together because there are a gazillion ways to go about it. Every artist makes his own style of coloring. I will show you what shaders I have used, how I have set the lighting setup. So see you in a minute. Okay, here's the final product. Let me show you what I have done. In Blender, I have added a plane and made an infinite background. And the material setup is straightforward. I have basically three materials, a golden one, a bronze, and an aluminum one. As you can see here, so no fancy textures and scratches or whatnot. Everything quite clean. And let me also show you the camera setup. There are two adjustments basically. I have given it a focal length of 80. The default one is at 50, I think. And I activated the depth of field with the focus on this part. And that's basically it. Then I made two renders, one with the background and one without the background. And let me also show you my workflow in Photoshop. In Photoshop, I opened the one with the background and the one without the background, and I used the one without the background for cutting out our design from the one with the background. So I basically took this guy, while pressing Shift, dragged it to this file, and if I press Ctrl and click on the thumbnail of this layer, I can select our design, deactivate this one, come to this one, to the one with the background, and if I press Ctrl J, I can duplicate our design without the background, and I have converted it to a smart object, made a copy. I gave it a camera raw filter, FD07, it's a preset. Within the camera raw filter window, you can check it out. And I wanted our design obviously to stick a little bit out. So therefore I gave the background a levels adjustment layer and made it slightly darker so that our design sticks out. So that's basically it. So if you like my workflow, you can also check out my Udemy course. And if you like these 3D lettering type of tutorials, please write it in the comments. So see you. Peace.